2023. It's been quite a year, eventful to say the least. So let's take a moment and look back at it in the final episode of 2023 for Music Arcade.
Containment breach! Containment breach!
Get the thermal catcher!
You'll never get me alive!
Hello everyone, welcome to the anniversary special of Music Arcade. I'm Galen, the SoundGuy Firestone.
I'm Monacle, do not panic.
And I'm Eddie, and I'm wondering what the hell is wrong with Discord with Sam at Sam's end.
And I am Sam, Olive Class Abnormality, ready to breach at any moment possible.
Yeah, we've been having some pre-production issues with Sam's audio, but we got them handled. We are here. Hello everyone. It has been a hell of a year.
Yeah, I was just gonna say I'll chalk that up just to Discord being Discord, because it is Discord.
Mm-hmm.
And also me trying to figure out this new mic.
Yeah.
Anyway, 2023, am I right?
Yeah.
This year was actually a fairly remarkable year for games.
It was a fairly remarkable year for games. It was a fairly remarkable year for us. We had some really good ones in here. I'm still very proud of our work covering the Score concert. I think that was probably, to me, our best episode this year. I liked our look at rhythm games a lot. I feel like we took that in some fun directions.
Yeah, we tried a few stuff overall.
Yeah.
And the Wheel of Instruments, of course, is going to live long and beat as hard as my beloved xylophone.
And April Fool's this year was insane.
It was great.
Yeah, I was gonna say that that xylophone is looking mighty dented right now, but it worked. Because we kept kicking that can.
We kicked that way down the road. Even our look at villain themes, I feel like was a pretty cool take on that topic, and I'm pretty happy about that. So I feel like we did some very good work, but obviously that was disrupted by a great deal of personal issues on our part. I went through a hell of a year, both personally and professionally. So did Eddie, I know.
I literally went under the knife for the first time in my life this year, so it's been interesting.
How's life without a gallbladder?
And for me, I've been figuring myself out creatively, finally getting my feet under me with my writing.
That's awesome.
Which
so
is a lot for me.
It's a lot. It's a lot for anybody, honestly. Trying to make it in a creative world, like, from personal experience, that is challenging in a creative field. You got to be willing to fight for it. With that said, this show has done a whole lot, and I say this every year, guys, but like, we're really doing some great work here, and I'm super happy with it. I've said it before, by this time in Gathering of Gotcha's life cycle, assuming, I don't think it even existed by this time, to be perfectly honest with you, but I was getting burned out pretty hard. I do not feel that with Music Arcade at all. We still have so much we're able to talk about.
There's still a lot of music to cover.
And even going back to music that has been covered before for different topics.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, one of the episodes I'd like to do at some point would be just re-exploring one of the early themes. That's going to be fun times. And there's still a lot of themes under the hood.
Oh, yeah.
And I mean, it says something that the main concern I have with Music Arcade at this point is that we didn't do enough of it.
That's a scary concern to have, but
because of the aforementioned understandable life circumstances, capital L, capital C.
Yeah.
We've had issues in all caps. But it's sort of the advantage of the topic we picked for the podcast, because even if we limit stuff to just let's not touch on past topics again, which is not something we have in mind. there's always new music coming out.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, even our episode topics, the Wheel of Instruments got added. We talked about, I like talking about concerts, and I'm glad we do that. I definitely like talking about it when we can talk about game music news. And our very first episode, I believe, was the Game Awards, and this is anniversary, and the Game Awards were just back here, so let's talk about the Game Awards.
This has pretty much become a sort of rite of passage for us. Each end of year episode we do this because why not? It's a tradition at this point.
Yeah, and I mean it is, for all the remarks and criticism they even get, it is a high point in video game news to set up the next year and a half coming up. So
yeah, it's basically what
works
E3
as a landmark.
It's basically what E3, may it rest in peace, used to be.
Yeah, I mean, I will not have that level of respect for the dead event, but
no, certainly not.
It has indeed ended officially after 3 years of being just conspicuously absent.
I think they tried a couple of times over those 3 years and couldn't get enough people in the door, so they had to cancel.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think,
and then also
I think
COVID regulations.
I think it's been 4 years. 2 of those were COVID, and 2 of those were just lack of people or companies going. But as for the Game Awards, they work mightily well. Even though I think it's fair to say that the event itself has a lot of controversies, let's say, with the audience, and I think they are valid. But on the music front, they are typically very, very on point.
I was doing the Warp It Up music.
Got it.
Yeah. Tragically, one of the ways they are on point with the music is with their usage of music to make people wrap up their acceptance speeches. But yeah.
That's something the Emmys and the Oscars have done for decades, but my understanding is that it was like super duper tight timing.
Yeah, it was 30 seconds per award. Which has been absolutely explicitly called out by Jeff on Twitter as being way too short, and they have apparently loosened it up a little bit as the show went, but will take things into account for next time.
Yeah, I think about half of the awards weren't even presented on stage. Then the ones that were had about 30 seconds for each speech, and that's ignoring that we had 10 minutes dedicated to talking to Kojima about a game that we don't know anything about other than that he's partnering with Jordan Peele.
Yeah, that sounds about right. Also, I may as well just go ahead and bring this up. They apparently announced a Death Stranding movie with Kojima directly involved with production company A24. I mentioned this
Could be very fun.
It could be fun. I'm just hoping they get the same cast. Like, if it doesn't star Norman Reedus, it won't be right.
Absolutely.
And he already hired a bunch of film and TV guys. Continuity of role, please, I beg you.
And then they also announced a new Monster Hunter, which, as a person who's played Rise through this past year, I'm really excited.
They announced a lot of good stuff that's going to have some killer OSTs, but I'd rather try to focus on the Game of the Year and music categories for this year. So,
okay,
let's look at those.
We have a little bit more time to talk about future releases later in this episode, but for now,
absolutely,
let's take a quick look here. I have them written down. Basically, 3 categories are kind of important for this podcast, which are Game of the Year, Best Score in Music, and in this year specifically, Best Audio Design, specifically because of who won. That was Hi-Fi Rush, which is a game that is basically a rhythm action game.
Yeah, I can't really blame them for that one. That's a pretty solid choice for sound design, even having not played it and only watching a little bit of footage of it.
It was what No Stray Roads should have been. And it's incredible that they just shadow dropped it completely at the beginning of the year. And it just came out perfectly formed.
It was pretty funny to me how much Microsoft overcompensated after the Game Awards. Because earlier in 2023, there was basically no marketing for Hi-Fi Rush.
Mm-hmm.
But as soon as it won the award for Best Audio Design, it's just been constantly at the top of the Xbox app on Windows.
The literal craziness of all of this is that it was lauded after its own community that was founded around it. Like, there was nothing. It was just the community. And it got a major award for itself at the Game Awards.
Yeah,
I mean, you say there's nothing, but is this, like, voted in? Are the Game Awards voted in, or is it a panel thing? Is it, like, an academy of whatever?
It's a panel thing.
Yeah, I don't think it's just the community then. I appreciate the for-your consideration stuff, but, like, clearly someone in the development side of things, knew what they were doing when they put this thing on the list and eventually
absolutely.
voted to win.
For good reason. Because it's finding great ways to integrate and time and arrange the music. Like, I haven't played it as well, but I've just watched, as an example, a sequence with one of the licensed tracks, Invaders Must Die, which is already a pretty good music for an action game.
Yeah.
But they also... Like, it's not just, let's put cool music in our game and it will work out. They have essentially directed the entire cutscene to fit the intro of the song so that when it kicks up, you get control of the action at the exact same time. Then there's the integrated sound effects to the action that emphasize the rhythm, guide the action. It's a lot of work to make the game tick and feel right.
I'm
glad they did all that.
Yeah, I think it says a lot that a music-based game won audio design when the competition were 3 different horror games, which is a genre known for being very good with audio design for the ambience.
Absolutely.
Plus Spider-Man 2, which is the second game by Insomniac, known for really capturing that vibe of being Spider-Man and the wind blowing past you and all that. And yet Hi-Fi Rush won audio design, and it says a lot about the work they did to make the music work seamlessly.
Oh, yeah.
And not just that, they also, for people who want to be able to stream the game or just, like, play the game on, like, YouTube, made a completely separate audio, like, set of tracks for the game.
Mm-hmm.
Just so that
Galen and I had some fun when you shared one of those.
Yeah, you shared a song, and I knew very little about Hi-Fi Rush at this point. Still pretty much don't. But you shared a song, and I'm like, my first reaction to the opening guitars, the way this sounds, I'm like, this really wants to be the perfect drug. Turns out that is, in fact, a serial numbers filed off version of the song that was used during that sequence, which was, in fact, The Perfect Drug by 9 Inch Nails.
Yeah, the copyright-free version is called In a Blink, apparently.
They know what they're doing.
They know what they're doing. That was very on point. So I'm actually very happy with that. It's weird, like, just in general, how much good Trent Reznor has done for, like, the music industry over the last 5 years, despite not really making music himself outside of scoring. It's almost funny. That's a whole other conversation for another time, though.
Then let's move on to the other main musical category, which is Best Score and Music, which had Alan Wake 2, Baldur's Gate 3, Hi-Fi Rush again, Tears of the Kingdom, and the winner, which was Final Fantasy 16.
We've talked about Soken a lot on this channel, unsurprisingly, given that 3 out of the 4 of us here play the game. Um,
I
Play
wonder
14,
who the
excuse me.
fourth one could be.
Yeah, I wonder. You haven't even tried the free trial?
I did try it, but
Okay.
I just don't really have the patience for MMOs anymore.
That's
Fair.
fair.
That's fair.
But at this time, he won for Final Fantasy 16.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Which I have yet to play.
Speaking of, the English release is coming soon.
And
It is
I
noted.
think,
They have noted in a Famitsu article.
The
no,
English release? I thought the game was already in English.
It
Didn't
released in English.
No, PC.
Okay.
Cut
Yeah,
that.
no,
Full brain moment.
You don't need to have checked a Famitsu article to know that from the moment it was announced as a PlayStation 5 exclusive, it had been present on the lower left corner that the exclusivity deal is until the end of the year.
Yeah.
Mhm.
2024, gates are open.
that's been pretty much how Final Fantasy works outside of Final Fantasy 14 for a
And-
while now.
And I'd assume it would have been a longer delay normally, but it's business creative free. They have an affinity with the PC.
And
Mhm.
I think just going back to the list of nominees for a second, I think it's
Yeah.
worth it to bring the names of the composers that we know of, because
Spoiler.
that's part of our mission on this podcast. It is to try to be transparent and give credit to the people.
Yeah.
So, of course, Final Fantasy, as we just talked, Masayoshi Soken. Alan Wake 2, that was Petri Alanko. I believe he's an in-house composer for Remedy. He's done Control as well. Maybe he's done the other games. I haven't played them. I've only played Control, and I know he was a composer there. Baldur's Gate 3 had Borislav Slavov, which I've brought up many times on this podcast already.
Yep.
Hi-Fi Rush was by Shuichi Kobori, and yes, he's credited as composer, so even with all the licensed track, they still got a nomination for the actual soundtrack, the score. And then we
And
have...
it's funny because on the site of the Game Awards, they credit him not as composer but audio director.
I think it does both, which is fascinating.
Yeah, which checks out. But I guess audio director has been privileged to encompass the music supervision.
It seems that way, and that's fine. I don't mind that at all. That, as I keep saying, that is a skill.
At least the name is out.
Yes.
Unlike a certain other company, Nintendo.
Yeah, for some reason on the Game Awards website, I don't think any of us here has actually played the game to check the in-game credits. But on the Game Awards website, the Tears of the Kingdom, Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom nomination was credited to Nintendo Sound Team, and it's 2023. Can we stop not crediting the people who compose the songs?
I mean, you say that, but Nintendo are, becoming one of the biggest villains in gaming, and people are ignoring that entirely.
I think they have already become. They just...
They're still not as bad as
hide
Activision, but they're getting there.
Yeah, they basically hide behind good releases and good consoles, but their business practices are awful.
Awful.
Mm-hmm. But let's get back to what actually won.
Sure. One thing I want to cover as one of the example tracks that I had in mind for this game, which I haven't played either, because I don't have a PS5. On the day of the Game Awards, I believe they also released an entire bit of expansion content, apparently. And
Yes.
Soaked very strongly in there, because it's battle-heavy content that ends with an encounter with Omega. And he could have done what he did for the rest of the game, which is composed a new original soundtrack that's apparently very good.
I'm getting scared.
Or he could have some bits from Asisla and some bits from Escape during the fight against this Omega 2.
Okay, beats from. I was afraid you just did Escape again, and I was gonna be like furious.
It's
It's funny, it's almost meta in a way, because it's this glitchy version that is accelerated and that goes with the voice samples that's played like 3 times as fast and completely distorted, like the monster is tired of itself.
Oh God.
Preceded by a sort of tangle of aim loops, for good measure. He's having fun, at least.
Yeah,
Yeah.
based on what you guys talk about the Final Fantasy XIV soundtrack, that sounds about right. Pretty on brand.
I
Gets
will
pretty
say
wild.
though, the 16 soundtrack does deserve the accolades that it's getting.
Oh, I'm sure it
Is-
does. I just shudder at the sound of Escape. At all. You know how much I hate that song.
I do, and that's when I heard it, I'm like, oh, Galen is gonna hate this.
No.
In the kindest way possible. Oh boy.
Oh boy. Yeah. Yeah.
This song alone will end up becoming Galen's supervillain origin story.
I mean, Escape is still responsible for my favorite joke on the show, bar none. How did I put it?
Yes.
You made a melody less complicated than Mary Had a Little Lamb. Are you proud of yourselves?
Correct.
I will never top that as long as I live.
Yeah. And then we might as well cover the Game of the Year category,
Okay.
which has, again, Tears of the Kingdom, Alan Wake 2, and Baldur's Gate 3, which
Yeah.
won,
Yeah,
along with Spider-Man 2, Resident Evil 4, and Mario Wonder.
it's a very stacked Game
That
of the
is
Year.
a stacked Game
list.
of the Year. I kind of want to congratulate Alan Wake 2 for even making the nomination list. Like, that's such a niche kind of game.
They didn't just make the nomination list. They won several.
Oh, yeah,
Of
but I
the
mean for Game of the
categories.
Year specifically.
And they were the live performance for this show, which was the correct call.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, like let's take a moment. Since we're talking Game Awards and music, we had Hailung performing an entirely new song, not on any of their albums,
I need to watch
with
that.
their typical ritualistic vibe on stage with fire at the Game Awards.
Yeah, apparently the 2 first row couldn't see anything after a while.
I
Oh,
can
dear.
imagine. That was a lot of fire, actually.
Hmm.
And that was for, of course, Hellblade 2,
Yep.
which they are soundtracking. They're scoring, I don't know. And another big music moment was Poets of the Fall performing under their name of Old Gods of Asgard for Alan Wake 2, alongside David Harewood, who is the voice actor and singer for the character of Mr. Door, and Matthew Peretta, who is also singing voice and voice actor for the character of Alan Wake.
And I
Yeah.
loved what they did with that, because the 2 were present, but they also had the face claim that was there, and they showcased the 2 with the face claim lip syncing to the other live singing without trying to hide anything, and just playing off the fact that this was what's happening. Between that and the part with just Sam Lake joining in on the choreography, looking just happy to be here. It was such a good moment.
Yeah, that was Ilkka Ville, who's the Finnish actor who provides his likeness to the character of Alan Wake, and he was lip syncing to Matthew Peretta.
And the fact that they mentioned, I believe, during the ceremony, both the names Old Gods of Asgard and Poets of the Fall. Again, giving proper credit. Doesn't mean it negates what the game's identity, on the contrary.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think every single time Jeff Keighley mentioned them, even prior to the event in social media, when announcing their presence, he was always saying Poets of the Fall as the old gods of Asgard.
Yeah, it's great.
I will fully admit that I started listening to Poets of the Fall at least once in a while as a result of, admittedly Control specifically.
I see.
And
Um,
a fun little side note to this is that just a little bit of context. Nowadays, new music in the age of streaming tends to come out on Fridays. Used to be Wednesdays back in the physical media days, but nowadays it's Fridays. And the Game Awards were on a Thursday. So what happened as soon as it hit midnight on that very same night, Old Gods of Asgard released Rebirth Greatest Hits with all songs they've ever released for Remedy games.
nice.
And coincidentally, for my time zone, that meant it came out as they were performing.
Oh, awesome.
Wow.
That's good timing.
Sweet.
So the game of the year.
Baldur's Gate 3, a game that I have managed to dodge somehow.
I think it's fascinating that Game of the Year had Alan Wake as a competition, let's say, but
Yeah.
Baldur's Gate 3 won. Meanwhile, Best Game Direction had the opposite happen.
I believe that.
Yeah, it's kind of like an official runner-up kind of situation.
I
But
think
happy with the
that-
choice of Baldur's Gate 3 because it just feels, on a design language point of view, like a well-wanted breath of fresh air.
It's very nice to see a lot of very niche games becoming this big and being nominated for these awards, because at the end of the day, Alan Wake and Baldur's Gate are both niche games. Baldur's Gate is a CRPG and it's very heavily for enforcing that CRPG identity.
Right.
Meanwhile, Alan Wake is a survival horror with a very meta postmodern narrative that not everyone would enjoy. And they were both there, winning awards left and right.
Good, that's good. I'd rather have a game try to do one thing great than trying to do all of the things because it wants to be the all game to end all game and kind of not do that right.
That was my response. What you just said was my response to GTA San Andreas when that first came out, and that kind of killed me on the
I
entire
was
GTA
thinking about
franchise.
GTA as well.
Yep.
I was thinking of Assassin's Creed Valhalla, but hey.
Well, yeah, but you're always thinking about a Ubisoft game.
He's got you there.
Not always. Not always.
What game are you thinking about right now?
Honestly, Gotham Knights, because I was playing it a little bit during this past week for Catharsis.
Well, getcha.
It is not a great game, and I don't think it's even a good game, but I had fun with it.
That's what matters in the end.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I've played some absolute jank that I've loved.
Sometimes that happens. But yeah,
Anyway,
I think that's it for the Game Awards this year.
Yeah.
It's a divisive event, but I think the actual awards being given and the musical performances were all very much deserved and solid.
yeah. I left the event happy myself. And not just because they announced Pony Island 2.
That's
I
the guy
didn't
who did
expect
like
Daniel...
Inscription, and that's that guy, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Daniel Mullins. I did
yeah.
not expect Daniel Mullins' announcement on the Game Awards.
You know what though? Good for
Inscription
them.
got him big, and good for him.
And he's pretty big on the ARG sphere of things. So here's another niche.
I played the
game.
Hex. I know.
Yeah,
Anyway.
the Hex and not by him, but the game Who's Lila. Those two are just big ARGs.
Oh, yeah.
I have
Anyway.
no idea what you guys are talking about. Go.
We're talking about good video games.
There's a YouTube channel I could share with you, but I cannot name the name here because it's a pun with a very, very crass word. Unless
We'll talk after the show.
yeah,
Yeah.
I'll just write it down on Discord and I'll let you chuckle at the pun yourself.
Oh, here we go.
So, Eddie,
Yes.
you have wanted to talk about the increased music availability on streaming services, I believe.
Yes. So
Let's talk about
2022 was a particularly good year for releases on streaming, and 2023 didn't exactly beat it because 2022 was just so many Japanese games coming on with their soundtracks coming on Spotify and such. But 2023 kept with that streak, kept it going. As I just mentioned, we had that Old Gods of Asgard compilation album coming right after the Game Awards, or in the
Yep.
middle of it for me. And we also have the deals with Japanese companies and artists. They continue to happen. So in 2023, those deals have mostly rewarded anime, the anime industry, more anime soundtracks. It does come with more Japanese video game soundtracks. And we also have the Chinese market with games like Arknights and the whole MiHoYo verse thing.
Mm-hmm.
They all keep releasing new stuff. We continue getting more music available at the ready at any moment, just behind a click of a button, and that's awesome.
Yeah, I'm not that much of a Spotify user myself, but for those that want to reach through this, good for you. And more availability, more methods to get your soundtrack are great.
Yeah, it's gotten big enough on Spotify that they have multiple Spotify made playlists all about video game music with usually just soundtrack entries. And we just had 2023 rewind, and my top list of genre was video game music.
Nice
So
out.
there you have it.
I will say one of the biggest points of vigilance and danger for this year, though, has been universal and general good guy of the online soundtracks distribution Bandcamp that had been under a good bit of pressure and turmoil, which is unfortunate given that they are this island of a company that, you know, actually pays composers well, by all means.
Yeah.
And the fact they're under
Spotify's,
threat,
Yeah, I talked about this before, but I was at A New World, the Chamber Orchestra Final Fantasy concert series, and Eric Roth flat out says in the concert as he's talking to us, if you buy our music, please do so on Bandcamp or buy a CD in the lobby. Please don't use Spotify. That says a lot that he's saying that to his audience in a concert. Like how much more, how just the revenue scaling and how much friendlier to artists Bandcamp is.
Yeah, from what I understand,
I want this to be maintained.
Yeah, there's a YouTuber in the heavy metal sphere, who goes by Tank the Tech. He's a frequent roadie in U.S. tours by metal bands, and he has industry insight on that. And he talks a lot about how pretty much every artist still releases on Spotify because they have to, and that is the biggest source of revenue, but entirely because of the sheer numbers, because most people are listening there. So most artists, they have a love-hate relationship with Spotify, but they would definitely love if there was an alternative that gave more money to the actual artist. Which, sadly, we don't really have many options nowadays. and I believe Amazon Music gives a little bit more than most. Meanwhile, Bandcamp is kind of just dying a slow death ever since Epic sold them.
Yeah.
Okay, Spotify, stop trying to be Studio Mappa. Pay your artists better.
Just in general, pay your artists better. It got so bad in the creative scene in the States that we had 2 major strikes this year, and a third one seems to be coming down the pipeline, and then a fourth one might be coming out the pipeline in 2024.
Yeah. Because there's this perception that people that are passionate about their art will do it for less pay, and that it's like the difficulty of producing good, consistent content that matches what you want is completely lost on some people that are buying hard into the AI stuff and trying to find ways to cut artists out of the loop as soon as possible. Almost like brands forgetting that people make their game.
I mean,
Or
not
even-
to go on.
Brands are nothing.
Or
not
even
to go
just
on to,
sorry.
No, go on. Mine is a tangent.
Or even just like giving the artists time to do what they're doing. I mean, when I mentioned Mappa earlier, I was talking about the situation in Japan where the studio Mappa is constantly moving their employees and artists to the point where there has been mass outcry about it, even past some of the NDA.
And I mean, not to go too far of a tangent here, but what Rana said about these companies, these businesses looking at people who love what they're doing and so they don't need to be paid that much, it applies to a lot more professions. Just look at teachers.
Yeah.
Teachers are kind of have that reputation of I'm a teacher because I love teaching, so you don't need to be paid very much.
Yeah.
And I think I can say this definitely about Brazil, but from what I understand, it's a global issue that teachers are among the worst paid jobs nowadays.
Yeah.
I know a guy. I started teaching this last year myself, university level, and I know a guy in my building who used to work for the same school I did and left for the private sector because he just couldn't live on that kind of money.
Yeah, my mom taught at high school levels, high school and middle school, for 26 years, and that was on the private sector, and she got paid like not awfully. The public sector was definitely much worse,
Yeah.
but was still, we've traditionally been the quote unquote poor people of our family because of that, because she just didn't earn very much.
Just in general, pay people what they're worth. Greed has really made a mess of things out in the world, especially the last 10 years, and it's getting old. I know, I mentioned there are several strikes in the entertainment industry coming down the pipeline. One is for video game actors, and I think that's ongoing. I haven't heard as much about that one.
I've heard it got greenlit. I don't know if it's actually happening.
I don't think it started yet, if it is. And then I know my union, IATSE, we're going up for contract next year, and the bosses they're unhappy. They want blood. So it says a lot that everyone is at this level of dissatisfaction with what we're being paid in the entertainment industry. And, the music union does exist, musicians union does exist, but it's a very minor player. They have very weak protections for their signatories.
Yeah.
And the advent of generative AI is just making things worse on that front.
It terrifies us. I've heard AI generated sound effects. I've heard that. It sucks. But producers want it because they can hit 2 buttons and suddenly they have a soundscape, even if it's shitty.
Yeah, exactly. They think they can sell off of other more prominent qualities like brand recognition and big names, and that this will be enough.
It won't. It won't, and it
be.
isn't.
And, like, it's crazy that the fact some of the artists and contributors are almost like saving these people from themselves.
Pretty much. I think the point about greed is kind of already on show in the games industry, just through the sheer rise in successes in the indie space, indie and self-published in general. We just talked about Remedy games winning awards,
Right.
and Larian games winning awards. Meanwhile, the big AAA studios that traditionally have been these beacons of creativity, they are just stuck doing the same franchises over and over.
You
There's
say
a
beacons
reason
of creativity,
Christopher-
but like the first couple of Game Awards had like Madden and Call of Duty win, and basically everyone was already memeing on them at that point. So I'm not really sure that's correct.
I'm mostly talking in that regard about the very beginnings. Not the last like decade or so hasn't been good on that front, and there's a reason Christopher Judge took a shot at Modern Warfare 3
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
on
exactly.
stage this year. But the constant greed by these companies is showing the lack of evolution in their franchises and their games. And then you have either completely independent studios like Larian and Remedy, or at least studios that have a lot of creativity freedom,
Like
to do what they
CB3.
want to. Exactly. Releasing some really cool stuff and having their games come to the forefront of the games industry in 2023. Because we are tired of getting the same old crap from the same old companies.
Mm-hmm.
I think that just the big companies are getting to the point where they're starting to emulate the, and I had to look up the term braku kigyo, the dark companies in like Japan that are willing to like put their creatives into bad situations and force them to still be doing what they're doing.
I think it goes beyond that, but that's certainly a part of the issue. They do look at that and go, "Hey, someone can get away with it. Why can't we?" But it's more than that. It's an overbearing control by people in the marketing department, and I've mentioned before in our Discord, but not on the show. There's this quote by Steve Jobs, who he's a guy I'd never liked, but sometimes people, even the people you dislike, get things right.
Even
And
a
he definitely
stop
got
clock is
things
right
right.
twice a day.
Exactly. And he definitely got it right when at one point he talked about how usually at companies the people who get promoted are in marketing or financial departments, and when they end up in charge and you don't have people with love for the product and for the art in charge anymore, everything is just made for the money and not for advancing the product. And that's where pretty much all of the big companies are right now, with maybe the exception of Nintendo, I guess.
They're still. I mean, They still do have an artistic side, but it's pretty clear they're hitting that corporate monster stage.
I mostly mean that they still have the love for the project in there somewhere, because they do still release innovative stuff.
Yeah, I've heard good
Let's
things about.
talk about those, actually.
I've heard good things about Mario Wonder. Obviously, Tears of the Kingdom was a big hit. Metroid Dread was fantastic.
Yes.
Those were
Mario
farmed
Wonder,
out,
I
though.
want to stay a little bit longer on that. Just to mention that it's not just a good soundtrack in itself, but also that it does interesting things with it. What with the musical wonder effects, the note blocks that are matching the music, the soundtrack that changes if you have the elephant power-up to be more brass-heavy. It's a wonderful little piece of soundtrack.
I see what you did there.
That was an accident, in fact. But I'll
It's in
claim it all
your
the same.
it's in your DNA at this point.
Kinda.
Clearly. But yeah, no, that's been an excellent entry when it comes to the soundtrack. And if we go more recent, still there's been the new WarioWare that's been predictably wacky in a way I love. And sure, you don't have much room to flex your soundtrack making prowess with 5-second micro games. But there's also boss levels, and some have some very entertaining soundtracks. Like, there's this one minigame that's a boss level where you have to spread your arms apart and flap your Icarus's wings, and on the background is like one of the coolest RPG tone theme for no apparent reason. For no apparent reason could be the subtitle of this game, honestly.
I mean, it's WarioWare.
But yeah, I love this WarioWare.
It's WarioWare.
Exactly. And then if we go early in the year, we had Fire Emblem Engage, which is my favorite soundtrack of the year. Plain and simple. It's just incredibly good. There's tons of stuff. There's callbacks, there's new stuff. It's got themes that reflects upon themselves. It's elaborate, it's bombastic, it's diverse, it's creative. I love it. This game is so stupid. But the soundtrack is the best part. But the game is stupid.
That's
Speaking
word for
of-
word what I have to say about Yakuza 6.
Speaking of games that are wonky, yet their soundtracks are good, I mean, we can go back a little further and pull it into this year because, honestly, it came out late enough last year to count. Pokemon Scarlet Violet has been doing incredible things with its music. It is... honestly...
No,
If there is anything...
I'm laughing because I had the Elite Four bug.
Oh no.
Oh, dear.
Yeah, we talked
Yeah,
about
so
it on the
that's-
podcast, didn't we?
Yes,
We did.
We
Um,
did. Which is why I'm not elaborating, but this was pretty incredible, alright?
It is... So... Gameplay aside...
No, that was specifically a music bug. That's why I'm
Wait.
talking about it.
Oh.
Yeah, the
Yeah,
one
the
where
game is...
the entire battle theme was just reduced to its early 5-second loop.
That
Fun
I said it
time.
at the time, I'll say it again. That one would have driven me up the wall. I would have been like, what boss music crap is this? How dare you?
It was.
I
horrendous.
I still think that, like, without any of the glitches, I played the game until I beat the main Pokédex and then haven't gotten the DLC, but I've listened to the DLC music and it's great. The composers there are fantastic. They even brought on a well-known indie composer known as you might know them from some places
It's
around
Toby
online.
Fox.
It's Toby Fox.
But yeah, I'm looking forward to return to it a little now that the DLC is fully out, both parts. Haven't done that because, again, busy week including multiple sickness.
Yep.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's definitely on the docket because I liked the game.
Like, for all that it was, Scarlet and Violet are a pretty good game that
Okay.
really, really needed some polishing.
Okay, to give you an idea, Galen,
Mm-hmm.
this was the Yakuza 5 of the franchise.
So it did too much, but parts of it were really good.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, from what I've seen of Scarlet and Violet, it honestly kind of shows that the dark uh, money grubbing side of Nintendo is slowly
I mean,
seeping into the creative
I don't
part.
even think it's just Nintendo. I think it's Game Freak.
I mean, we can't tell, so might as well point that something's wrong and that we're probably gonna see more of it later.
Yep.
Give me
Sadly.
Pokemon Mystery Dungeon. Give me a new Mystery Dungeon game. Give me a new Rangers game.
Well, boy, do I have a game to recommend you eventually. We'll talk about that later on. There is more on the Mystery Dungeon style things. But for now, let's move on and talk about a topic that you, Galen, wanted to bring up, which was a couple of examples of tracks that were good on principle but suffered from bad engineering.
Yeah, this is something that I ran across in general this year, despite a couple of prior year games being in there. And the first example of this was from an indie game we've talked about a couple times on this channel, and that is To the Core. A game with engineering so bad I didn't even realize there was a soundtrack until my third time playing.
I think
my
that
God.
one's kind of a mix of bad engineering and the worst UX I've ever
Uh-huh.
seen.
Oh yeah,
Because no single game ever, other than To the Core, starts with all the volume down at
Uh-huh.
0%.
But why?
Yeah, that's a $64,000 question, Sam. Why?
Yeah, and like when you open the settings menu and you see the full bar in a single color, you think, oh, it's 100%. No, it's not. It's 0.
Yeah, it was really surprising. If I can't tell there's a soundtrack, something has gone catastrophically wrong. I had to mess around with the settings and discover there was a soundtrack, and then it turns out the music's really good. Not that most players will notice it because they're not going to check that settings.
Or even if they do check the settings, they will think it's 100%. Because
Yeah.
bad UX.
Yeah, it's really bad. Another case where this came up was, we're doing this Year of the Dragon Challenge. We talked about it a lot this year. Yakuza 7 Like a Dragon. I went off on an almost half an hour long rant about how bad the engineering is in that game. That game is one of the most incompetent audio engineers I've ever run across. This is supposed to be a major release. Who hired this guy?
Which is all the more a shame because, again, the music itself
Is good.
there's
It's a good
lot of
soundtrack.
good tracks.
Yeah. But it's just so gunked up in just baffling, bordering on terrible audio decisions, on a strictly technical side. Like, for one thing, there's a slider that says sound effects and a slider that says voices. So why are you putting voice effects on your sound effects line? You have a voices button. Use that. That's literally what it's there for.
Also, neither of those sliders affect the pre-rendered cutscenes.
At all. I could go on and on and on and on and on about this. The fact is, I had to, like usual with the Yakuza franchise, listen to the game's soundtrack after the fact just to hear it most of the time. Because even if I had sound effects turned to practically nothing, it was still overpowering the music. I don't understand this. Now, admittedly, Lost Judgment, I've just started that game not too long ago. They fixed this. I'm actually really fine with the sound design on this one. So clearly they hired someone competent between 7.
I mean, they had me the moment I noticed that the thinking sound doesn't loop anymore.
Yeah.
Clearly somebody paid attention.
Yeah.
I wonder why that didn't win Best Audio Design at the Game Award.
Me too. The fact that
because it didn't release this year.
I mean, honestly, like, the amount of yelling I did when talking about this engineering as a whole, it made me lightheaded. I actually overworked myself. I was so angry about it.
I heard a fair bit of it.
Yeah.
I heard a fair bit of it.
It's
I can believe you.
Truly embarrassing. And, like, this keeps happening. Like, I played another couple of indie games off screen where it's like, why are your levels so completely different? Just normalize, guys. Normalize. I've screamed about this forever. Normalize. Just hit the normalize button. It may not seem like an important thing, but it's the most important thing. Normalize. What that does is it takes your stem and it sets it to the... It takes whatever stem you're on and it sets it to the maximum possible volume before clipping. It's just an automated... It's just not even automated. Automatic gain control. That's all it is. But it sets everything even, so then you go into mixing with that. Or, like... And then you mix from those stems. That way everything is even going into the mixing process. It's not hard.
Doesn't sound hard. Sounds like something I could do with a bit of time.
It wouldn't even take a bit of time. It's 4 clicks. You click on a stem, you click on your plugins button, you hit normalize, you hit render.
It is literally as easy as people wanting to do AI
Yes.
can do.
Yeah, let's have an entire AI to normalize the soundtrack when it's four
called
buttons away.
It's called a 4 clicks macro.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a 4-click macro, essentially. If you really want to automate your automatic normalization, sure. If you're that lazy, hats off to you. Good job figuring out a solution.
To be fair, the most lazy people will come up with most creative solutions.
Mm-hmm.
I see you've seen my work when I was at university.
Listen, when you need to get that paper out in time, you figure out the most efficient way to get a 10-pager done in like 3 hours.
Yes, that is...
Boy, I'll have a story to tell you later about how I finished a presentation in the middle of the class I was supposed to present it at.
Let's pause the banter right there.
Okay,
You have an episode to finish.
This has been a year of, like, just finding games with the most incompetent sound engineering. And as someone who does this for a living, I'm like, who let this through QA?
And who teaches this for a living?
Yeah. Who let this through QA? How is this allowed to happen?
I think that it's good that you're being a teacher so that people who've been in your class make that not happen.
Yeah, clearly some lessons needs to be taken.
Oh, yeah. No, Sam, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and announce this. Sam actually said, when we talked about Yakuza 7, that I should take clips of this and show it to my show it to my students as what not to do. Hey, guess what got added to my lesson plan for next semester?
Excellent.
Oh boy. Students gather around and video games.
I am glad my suggestion got in.
Yeah. There was a non-zero
Eddie.
chance I would have done it anyway, but you definitely put the idea in my head for that point in time.
Now then, Eddie.
Yes.
I wish you an excellent nap for the next section. Let's talk about gachas.
I'll go take a bathroom break. I'll be right back.
Okay.
Okay, so we each have our vice.
Yep.
Except Eddie, who is pure and perfect and never did anything wrong.
I mean, let's be fair. I do play, not right now, but I usually do play Destiny 2, so I'm not entirely pure.
Yeah, true.
If
How's your
only
wallet?
you knew.
I'll start real quickly on my end. Star Rail got Best Mobile Game and released and got through its Immortal Space China arc. And now it's going to get into weird places, which is good because I want the Star Rail setting to go weird places because that's what it does best. And if the track for some of the bosses is any indication, it's gonna be a fun time. And Genshin went meanwhile in fantasy wet France. And it has underwater glass harmonicas and lots of accordion. 10 out of 10, no notes.
There you go. Obviously, I'm a big Arcademas player, and Arcademas is pretty well known for a soundtrack to the point where it's a meme that it's a music company that dabbles in game development.
Yes.
And we've had some pretty wild ones this year. I mentioned Il Siracusano, which had that like crazy swing jazz song. I mentioned, the 2001 A Space Odyssey inspired Lone Trail event. We just got a rerun of Stulta Terra Novus, which included the War Shanty. Like, this soundtrack is as all over the place as FF14. To its credit.
True. Absolutely.
Which is funny because they basically added Archetypes-like outfits through the PvP
They really
in
did.
14.
I hope they'll be able to keep that up for and something.
Yep. And then they had the fourth, or I think third or fourth, ambient synesthesia concert.
Yeah.
The fact that they're still able to do these concerts is really cool, and they're always different.
So I started diving into my gacha in October. This game had just been out for a year.
Mm-hmm.
And what game that is? Wow, voice crack. Coming back in. The game that I've been playing is Limbus Company, the newest installment from Project Moon. The same people who brought you Wall of Sound. For a second warning. Jokes aside, Limbus Company is a really fun game. Its soundtrack is really good. It's evocative. It's wonderful. It plays well with the gameplay. It even has slightly dynamic music depending on whether you're winning or losing.
Mm-hmm.
We like that.
And also, recently in the most recent stuff, they just did a progressive music, like instrumental to vocal music track for the final boss fights of the recent chapter. And between that and also a bunch of other, I'll be talking about other indie things probably a little later. But my enjoyment of the game has been great. It has been actually reasonable to get into gacha without paying out the ears.
Yeah.
Oh, which reminds me, occasional warning that, especially now that it has a Steam client, that Final Fantasy Ever Crisis is bad and thirsty for all of your money and then some.
Yeah.
Don't.
Mm-hmm.
Gathering of Gotchas comes back from the dead for that one statement. Just don't.
Yes.
But I'm looking forward to see what music they do continuing on. Especially because I'm interested to see what they do for the Christmas special that they're apparently planning.
I'm already scared.
We're looking forward to that. Now then,
Listen,
shall we
Project
move on to
Pro-
roguelite?
Oh, one last thing. I'm afraid because Project Moon, whenever they do things that are normally happy cheery, usually don't end up that way. Anyway, roguelites.
Yeah, turns out, as far as bastions of pretty great musics go, roguelites, pretty reliable.
Pretty reliable. There's a list of them that have had great soundtracks this year, and I guess prior year that I've only played this year. Like I mentioned To the Core already. Great soundtrack if you could find it. RoboQuest, we've talked about a few times on the show. There's a game I've been playing called Talented, which is a roguelike disguised as a giant talent tree. That is a great soundtrack. Time Wasters, which is a twin-stick shooter. I've talked about Army of Ruin a few times, and it's not a roguelite, but it is an indie game, Town of Salem 2, which not only has the Town of Salem 1 soundtrack, which was already very, very memorable despite being short, even has Christmas versions now, apparently. The indie game space has been super, super, super good on soundtracks this year, and I'm here for it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and on my end, I'll add that there's also Risk of Rain Returns that had its new remixes, including one new track that includes weather reports used as music samples. There's been Halls of Torment.
Oh, that's some Zeral.
which has,
That's some Pharrell
there-
Williams stuff right there.
captured,
And wasn't there the Castlevania Dead Cells crossover this
Yep.
year?
Oh yeah, that was this year.
In fact, that's another one that got the soundtrack on streaming as well, in spite of Konami.
Yeah, basically they went, okay, cool, let's use the excuse we're doing Castlevania stuff to have a Castlevania expansion to have new tracks, but also like an entire alternative soundtrack that is using the Castlevania music and tracks over the entirety of the existing game.
Pretty much, if you check the album, it's basically a full game soundtrack. It's not a DLC soundtrack in size, and
Yeah.
it even comes with I think it counts as a separate disc with versions of the songs that use an 8-bit sound font,
Yes.
including songs from Symphony of the Night, which basically the first time you hear them in 8-bit.
Indeed. They're having fun.
They are.
Mhm.
And yeah, I mean, for a genre that is based on having to return to the same location multiple times, they do need to have some good music, and clearly it's a lesson they've taken to heart. Oh yeah, there's also Dungeon Drafters that I got into somewhat recently, which qualifies as a roguelite, which also has great music, including a great track that I heard and was like, this really is trying to be Secret of Mana. Oh wait, it's Secret of Mana's composer's guest track. Okay, that makes sense.
Yup. Yeah, you played that, and I'm like, yeah, that's Kikuta. That's absolutely
Yeah.
Kikuta.
Yeah, and this is the Mystery Dungeon style game that I was talking about. Similar progress, but instead of Pokemon, you are deck building. It's really fun. And now to expand a little bit on mostly the indie zone, any other game that's released from early access this year but existed before that we might want to cover.
It sounds like you have a
Because,
specific one in mind.
Something
Well-
Baldur's Gate 3.
Yeah, Baldur's Gate 3 qualifies because it
Robo
was for
Quest
the longest
qualifies.
time on early access, and yes, that qualifies. Alright, that's... yeah, there it is. The Last Spell also qualifies and also has a killer soundtrack.
Yeah, we've
We
got
do
some.
like the occasional good early access game, and yeah, by now we're fully on that treadmill of the game that clearly see a lot of work and a lot of love releasing.
Mm-hmm.
Against the Storm also had its full release like this month.
Oh, wow.
2023 had a lot of good game releases and also got a lot of good game quote unquote releases.
Yeah.
And so it's mainly there not because it's a distinct sound, but because gotta categorize them somehow, and it's not a typical release, but if we're gonna pick a date and choose, might as well be the official 1.0 release date.
Hey, if the Game Awards does it, so shall we. Sounds like industry standard at this point.
Fair enough.
And to add to that list, counting both as a roguelite and as a game that technically left early access this year, Against the Storm has a fantastic neo-folk soundtrack.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's very composite, it's very adaptable. Looks great. Now then, let's move on to the next section. We already talked about Final Fantasy 16 a little bit. I haven't played all that much of 14 during this year. I've taken a longer break than usual in order to return fresh and prepared for Dawn Trail.
I will personally
This is the
say
section
that,
where I take a second bathroom break, right?
yeah.
Exactly.
I will say that personally, I kind of got burned out on the game. Creative decisions during the patch cycle of Endwalker have left me very cold. That said, the soundtrack is still great. Like, that hasn't changed. The music is still
Yeah.
terrific.
Oh yeah, like in particular that second 24-man raid tier with the Harvest Music Festival like theme.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's still a lot of good tracks there. No doubt about it.
And I am also looking forward to Dawn Trail. I'm looking forward to a good reset. I can accept a bad patch cycle and a bad expansion. That's just a thing that happens in MMOs. I accept this one was my least favorite and move on with life. And I'm looking forward to what comes next.
And maybe one of the game's greatest strengths is that it kind of lets you take this break without punishing you hard.
Yeah, the only thing I really have to do is log in to keep my house, which I'm fine doing.
Yeah, exactly. And if you don't have a house like me, you're fine taking a 6+ month break and returning. I'll just have some main story patch to catch up.
Yep.
And then we'll be in business.
Then we'll be in business. So yeah, what I've seen from Dawn Trail is rather exciting. I'm not like super into it yet, but I'm liking what I'm seeing. I'm definitely not like angry at it or anything like that. I know Sam kind of accused me at one point of not liking anything about the game, which I think is a little unfair, but I also understand that I was extremely salty when I tried playing.
Yeah, I'm sorry again about that. I was just seeing the salt and kind of was resonating around it.
I understand. I probably should not have played under that mental state, but I did because I felt I had to. And you may notice a couple days later, I'm like, I need to cut some games off of my rotation or I'm going to lose my mind.
Yeah.
So that was a nice wake-up call.
I think I talked with you for a bit about like that before you ended up doing that.
Probably. I don't remember the exact specifics. Maybe you did. If you did, I'm sorry. I don't really remember. But I was also like in like mental like La La Land because that was like right after my cat passed away, and I was not in great mental state.
Cat passing away, school.
Work drama.
The worst.
Yeah, work drama did not help at all either. I was like ready to pop.
And then like you were like Final Fantasy was catching strays from everything going on.
It was, but also I do feel like at least my complaints about the 24-man were legitimate. Even looking back at it, I'm still like,
correct.
This is not great.
Like in hindsight, the 24-man is not as good.
Yeah.
Because of how they resolved it.
Yes. Yeah.
But as raids themselves,
I like the first two sections a lot.
And that's the only ones I saw, so I'm like, seemed fine to me. I wonder how they messed it up.
Yeah, you'll find out. I won't spoil it.
You'll find out.
I'm sure I will.
It's very.
I got so angry I actually rage quit and have yet to actually beat the third one. Although
I watched it happen on stream. It was.
I was livid at what they did. I was like, how dare you? It takes a lot to get me this far.
Anyway, let's move on then to the next point on our episode order, which is, we've played a couple of games of a certain series, I believe.
I gotta be honest, I'm really enjoying the Like a Dragon challenge, but like, or the Year of the Dragon challenge, but like...
Yeah, I'm really glad when it's over, you know?
Yeah, I'm gonna take a nice long break from the franchise once I finish Infinite Wealth. I'm like, I do enjoy this, and I'm looking forward to the next one, but I've got to play something else.
I'm gonna be honest, the more I hear about you two playing Yakuza non-stop and not necessarily going 100% on every game, but trying to do as much as you can. I picture what my equivalent would be, and that would be doing the same for Assassin's Creed, and I would die inside in the middle of it.
It's hard.
It helps that there's a lot of good Yakuza games.
Yes.
Though.
Yeah.
And with
I felt
a
those
lot
shots
of
fired.
good soundtrack. Like, they have a sound, they start with that sound, and then it was genuinely interesting to see how the sound evolved, and
Yeah.
Even between the first two games and the first two remakes, and then having Ishin do its thing, have Judgment having its very distinct sound, even I know you haven't played it yet, but down to the latest Gaiden, they still do interesting things with both a couple of remade tracks that are interesting, and the Yakuza-style fight theme for Kiryu reminded me of the track they used for the battle theme for Dante in Devil May Cry 5. A game in which a protagonist that has overstayed his welcome for 2 games at least ends up getting punched in the face by the new guy during the climactic sequence. Now, I'm not saying this is what should happen or should have happened in this game, but
You're not.
It was a
not
great
saying
moment.
either.
yeah.
As long as I don't have to hear the Ichincho battle music from Yakuza 7 again. Again, it's a perfectly fine song on its own, but much like the Year of the Dragon challenge, too much of it definitely burned me out on it.
I look forward to you getting sick of the the Hawaii battle theme.
We are not Miami, my dude.
Clearly not.
The opposite side of the country past an ocean.
Yeah.
Shots fired.
Look,
because the guy lives there.
Yeah.
Sometimes my brain does things. And I do not endorse them.
Oh my god. Okay.
Anyway, look forward to be sick of the Hawaii battle theme.
I hope they're smart enough to mix it up. Or
Yeah.
they do what I recommended they do, which is pull a Persona 5 Strikers and just have a randomizer, have a battle music randomizer that you could turn on.
That would be pretty great.
Quick-
That may happen.
Quick
That
notice.
may happen because there's a playlist function on your smartphone.
Okay.
It's not functional in the demo yet. but
Okay. So it's
It could be a
possibly
thing.
learned this lesson. What were you saying, Sam?
Quick mention that I'll probably expand on during a further section. If you haven't looked into Persona 5 Tactica, look into it.
I've heard the soundtrack is great, but the game itself is a little underwhelming.
Mm-hmm.
Also, a quick shout out. Rana mentioned the apparently right now not functioning, but present ability to have a playlist on your phone in game, which
Yeah.
in the past I've mentioned there was a cool mechanic in Watch Dogs 2 that I wished was repeated for Watch Dogs Legion, which still
Yeah.
not repeated there, but Cyberpunk 2077 released patch 2.1 that adds that function to their game,
Oh, great.
Cool.
Good.
which
Good.
makes full sense for the cyberpunk setting.
Yeah.
You are basically a cyborg, so here's hoping more games do this, because there's a lot of settings where you can justify it, and it's a cool
Yeah.
mechanic.
I stand by the fact that one of the best things to do in Metal Gear Solid 5 was to call up your helicopter and to have it slowly fly down with Take On Me blasting full volume on the speakers of the helicopter.
Nice.
You know-
That's how you make an exit.
You know, stealth game.
Exactly. Now, on that note, how about we talk about our favorites for this year?
Sounds good.
Starting with the best song.
I guess I'll start.
By all means.
So, again, Like a Dragon Challenge, but back in March, I believe it was, the third game of the Year of the Dragon was Like a Dragon Ishin, and I fell completely in love with the final boss of that game, Assassination of Bodhisattva. That song is incredible. That's gonna go on my favorite final boss themes of all time somewhere in there, like up there with Dancing Mad. It is that good.
It goes places.
It goes
it has
places.
Movement similar.
It does. And while the franchise has usually had good boss and final boss music, there are not many songs that get that good at all. That's my favorite song of the year.
Yeah. On my end, it's a bit hard to tell, but I think I'm going to go for RoboQuest's main menu theme.
Solid.
Or the remix they use for the final phase of the final boss, because that's how you reuse a song that good.
Yep.
Yeah, that's a solid one. I initially listed one song. I sort of divided on whether I think that is the best or just catchier than my number two. So I'm mention two songs real quick. The one that I listed as my favorite when we initially talked about this was Battle Ready from Destiny 2 Lightfall, A.K.A. the one Destiny song that Galen can remember as soon as he listens to the first two notes.
Yep.
It is great at giving the vibe they wanted, which is feeling like the hero of an 80s action movie.
Exactly.
But my honorable mention, which would be potentially my favorite of the year, is actually Dark Ocean Summoning from Alan Wake 2.
Fair.
Not Herald of Darkness, which is everyone's favorite, because I have a bit of a low threshold for musicals. But Dark Ocean Summoning is an amazing song, and somehow, even though I am generally a man who's gotten really burnt out of power metal, this song, which is the most power metal-y song that Old Gods of Asgard ever did, is one of their best. It's really fun, really energetic, really cool.
If we're doing special mention, my special mention goes to Tides of the Foschari, the kazoo version.
I was wondering when that would show up.
I guess my special mention is going to be the, even though I didn't play it on stream, the music to the game Talented, because that one grows every night you survive. And I like that sort of layering. That makes me happy inside.
Well, you've made me positively intrigued, and I think I'm going to look into Talented.
It's a take on Game Boy games, so be warned. The color palette is Game Boy Color at best.
I've played Obradin.
My favorite song for the year is the Titan Lost theme from Final Fantasy XVI.
Okay.
It is honestly one of the major peaks in the game, and if you didn't know any better, you'd think it was geared as a final boss theme.
Good,
It is straight up insanity, bombastic. It both emulates the 14 Under the Weight, but at the same time makes it feel even more like... So for reference, with this song, you are a tiny speck. You normally are as tall as 2 buildings or more. And you are just a tiny speck compared to the thing that you're fighting. And the Titan Lost theme makes you think that, oh wow, we actually have a chance against this.
Okay.
Sounds like some Shadow of the Colossus stuff to me.
Yeah, sounds like a very powerful feeling.
It is Shadow of the Colossus meets Metal Gear Rising.
Huh. An interesting mix.
Like, I am extremely excited to see when Galen ends up being able to play it.
Sometime next year. I've probably got to get through Infinite Wealth first.
Yeah,
Yeah.
And
but
it'll be on
then
PC
we'll
by then.
have the
but when you do,
and
but
then
when
we'll
you
have the
do,
Final Fantasy fun time with both that and remake that comes out. Well,
but
rebirth.
my special mention, uh, going back to Pokemon, because I can't like not respect a person who is like worked their way into one of the most well-known franchises in the world with their musical talent. Toby Fox's Terror Raid music in Scarlet Violet. It is
Even though the Terror Raid are so trash.
even if they're like even if the mechanic is trash, it makes it so that it is not grating when you go into it. It is basically what if
Yeah,
we
no,
did the
the music's
like
great.
what if we did something like the Ijin Show battle theme, but actually made it re-listenable?
No, that's I can't grant you that. It's not that. It's a great theme, but I think the comparison is a bit of a stretch.
To be fair, it was brought up of like you just listening to it so much. In any case,
Yeah.
moving
Let's
from
move on from
sound,
individual song to soundtracks. I've already mentioned mine, Fire Emblem Engage. Amazing, spectacular, stellar.
Again, too much Yakuza. My answer is Yakuza 6, the one thing that game did very, very, very right. Probably Saori Yoshida's best work. She's one of the secondary composers. But man, she's got 3 songs on there that absolutely knock it out of the park, and that's Theory of Beauty, which is the boss theme for Jungihan, which gets reused in 7, which I was very happy about,
As it
because
should.
if you're gonna reuse music from prior games, that's one of them to reuse.
Yeah.
Destiny, the boss theme for Somea. The second
Yeah.
boss theme for Somea. And then one of the dungeon run musics, Route of Caspid, which you do through the fight through the shipyard, which was actually a fun dungeon, being perfectly honest.
Absolutely.
This is we've talked about this at length, but this is one of the reasons why I'm much more okay with Yakuza 6 over Yakuza 3, is because I had more to latch onto with 6, even if that was overall a very, very bad game. And Saori Yoshida really kind of knocked the soundtrack out of the park on that one. So, additionally, not even her work, but you also have Fist Law, which was done by Phantasy Star Universe composer Kenichi Tokoi. That was the Yuta boss theme. There was also, on the subject of Kenichi Tokoi, his remix of Fiercest Warrior, original by Saori Yoshida. Strangely called Bugs Warrior. I don't know why it's called that, but that's a really great remix of that song, too.
The drones.
You know what? The drones. On and on, just really good soundtrack all throughout Yakuza 6. So that I look back on Yakuza 6 and go, that soundtrack puts a smile on my face, even if the game doesn't. So that gets my win for the year. At least of the games I've played. Of the games I haven't played, and I keep trying to play, and as for 2 years now, come up on the Christmas special and has not succeeded in getting there. And that is going to be Metal Hellsinger. Because I'm a big metalhead and I love the vast majority of people singing on this thing, and it's a really great soundtrack.
Yep.
All right. Favorite soundtrack next?
Yeah, I haven't really played many new releases this year, but that's not to say that my pick is bad by any means, because it's RoboQuest.
Yeah.
And I think we have mentioned RoboQuest enough through the latest few episodes to make it clear that it is amazing.
Soundtrack really good, yeah.
Yeah.
Shout outs to Noise Cream, who's the artist behind the soundtrack.
Mm-hmm.
Meanwhile, mine, you heard me talk about this soundtrack during the episode with a lot of enjoyment and like care with it. Limbus, like this game that has come out and been serviced over the year is been incredible with how it's been able to do its music and how it's been able to pull you in with themes that make you either push forward or make you realize the gravitas of the situation, or just allow you to do one step in front of the other in like a long drawn out like fight that you end up having to do sometimes in the game. There are some tracks that are like a little more subdued and they are nice, but there are also tracks that are like that are boss themes. There are some tracks that are well known because they are used as consistent things throughout the game as like leitmotifs for both the victory and for being on the back foot. And then we get to the Millie songs. Millie has been a band for Project Moon and other projects for a while now. And every single time that we get one of the songs from them, it is incredible. Every time. The lyrics might throw you off if you don't know the series, but if you know the series and know the context of things, the songs go from, this is really good, the lyrics are weird as all, but the music is just perfect. But when you know the context, it turns from perfect to, oh my god.
Context-sensitive music is something we've actually discussed quite a bit this year. There's a couple of songs that I've listened to that make absolutely no sense on a soundtrack, but are absolutely wonderful in the context of the game itself. So elevating that, starting with a good song and then adding the context to it, is usually a good sign.
Like,
Yeah,
my few things from, like, I'm going to, like, cover P-Moon, like, overall, is Gone Angels, from Library of Ruina, and then Between Two Worlds and Compass from Limbus. Compass being the most recent song released for the final boss of the chapter.
Mm-hmm.
Alright, now then, as our second to last section, let's go with Music Arcade not playing.
Right, we've covered...
Where we shout out a lot of good songs of games we haven't played.
Well, I just mentioned Metal Hellsinger, and I guess I should mention by default FF16, because I have yet to play it.
Yeah.
FX16 is one of them, because I do not have the money for the $600 buried entry.
Well, that's almost done, because it's almost on PC. And then I also want to, I mentioned Town of Salem 2. I'm not playing that myself. I'm just watching Chill Chaos play a lot of it, and his cohort.
Well, if we're going to mention things we have watched but not played, recently one of the tracks that came up regularly was Dracula's Castle from Symphony of the Night, as is heard in Grand Poo World 3's Tower of Fate.
I really need to start watching Grand Poo World 3 footage. I have not watched a single
Okay,
of it
so
yet.
let me just talk to you about why this track in particular. So, it's a great track that can be listened to on and on for a long time.
Right.
Which makes sense because the Tower of Fate is a series of one-screen puzzles, essentially.
Okay, I remember just...
There's a normal mode and there's a hard mode. The normal mode you have to do like 10 of them in a row, and then you can fight a boss and move on. And the hard mode, you have to do every single of the 81 rooms in a row on a single life.
Oh god.
This took some of the Kaizo enthusiasts like 30 hours just to do this challenge.
Barb needs to make non-ROM hack games. Please let him make games for us.
Absolutely. And so while watching this torture, there was a lot of Dracula's Castle, which is a good choice because again, it's present, it's very nice, but also won't make you hate your life 12 hours in.
Was that Composer again? Or was that like Dan the VP or one of the other?
I don't know who is in charge of the remix precisely, unfortunately.
Okay. Usually Barb is pretty good about releasing his soundtrack notes, so hopefully that's forthcoming.
Yes. On the other great soundtracks I haven't paid much attention to because I haven't played the game, Octopath Traveler 2 came out.
Right.
And
Yes.
it's got some great soundtrack elements. I'm just not ready to do another Octopath Traveler just yet.
I don't know if I'll ever be ready for another Octopath Traveler, but yeah.
There's been Bayonetta Origins, which apparently has some pretty trippy moments and some surprisingly engaged boss fight themes.
Then there's Hi-Fi Rush.
Yeah, of course. I mean, we've mentioned that before, but haven't played it. But that's certainly an excellent pick. There's been the Advanced Wars Reboot Camp, which had some crazy remixes.
I mean, for all I've been talking about Alan Wake 2, you think I've played it, but I haven't. And shout out to the Old Gods of Asgard songs there. Because there's actually a third one. I've name dropped 2 of them already. Dark Ocean Summoning and Herald of Darkness. But there's also a third one called Anger's Remorse. So shout outs to those. Because Remedy...
Yeah.
While Remedy's soundtrack, at least for Control, I can't speak for Alan Wake 2, is not necessarily something that blows your mind. Their use of Poets of the Fall as the Gods of Asgard in universe is always great, and I thoroughly recommend people check out online on YouTube. If you don't want to play the game, check out the Herald of Darkness section of the game and the Dark Ocean Summoning section. Those are both not just an amazing audio experience, but also 2 amazing visual experiences. And Anger's Remorse is the third song, which they actually have all 3 songs on their official artist channel as Old Gods of Asgard.
Then, to continue on the great soundtrack of the games that I haven't played, Street Fighter 6. The fight themes have been pretty underwhelming, but the character selection theme is pretty solid.
I really want to play the adventure
something.
mode of that game. I hope it's good.
Yeah. Rain Code. I haven't delved deep into that soundtrack, but it's some Masafumi Takada that does things and that can't be bad.
Which game was this?
then-
Raincode?
Rain-Code,
It is, I believe, by the same people who did Danganronpa.
Oh.
yes, and it's a detective game.
That
If only we if
Sorry.
only we played detective games this day, Galen, am I right?
No, I just want to shout out that O from Galen when Sam said it was from the guys who made Danganronpa. Like, that should be a sound clip to just play on cue on stream and something happens. Something bad happens.
Sorry.
No, it's great. Are you kidding me?
It's amazing. Like, it's by the guys.
Anyway,
This game sounds solid. Oh, it's by the guys who made Danganronpa. Oh,
fine, it's fine. He doesn't. If it's not his thing, I can't blame him.
yeah. It's like
It's very silly anime stuff.
it's kind of like if someone
Not approachable.
told me, "Oh, there's this new Castlevania game. It's amazing. It's very fun. It's for mobile." Oh,
Yeah, that would...
Wasn't that bad.
I couldn't play it.
Anyway.
Isn't it on like Apple Arcade now?
Yeah. I think they couldn't sell enough microtransactions, so it's on Apple Arcade.
Oh my god.
Anyway. We've also had the remakes of Baton Kaitos 1 and 2. Have I played the originals? No. Have I played these ones? No. Am I going to skip a chance to mention a Sakuraba entry? Absolutely not. There it is.
Take a drink.
That's the obligatory Sakuraba entry for this episode. Gotta check that mic.
Yeah. And speaking of things I haven't been playing, the music is great. I haven't played the Pokemon DLC.
Sounds about right. Yeah, I haven't.
That was it for my list.
Yeah, I like I said, I haven't played many releases, but I have seen many interesting things. So of course, Alan Wake 2, all the Old Gods of Asgard stuff already mentioned. Hi-Fi Rush also haven't played. Of course, we've heard amazing things about it, so there's that. Street Fighter 6, I've also sort of tangentially followed it. I not haven't really checked it directly. I really am looking forward to eventually getting to play the adventure mode, the single player thing. It seems like the most fun single player mode in a fighting game in many years. Also, I haven't played the DLC for Cyberpunk 2077. I don't think my PC can run it. But I hear it has some fun cuts here and there, but it's mostly a continuation of the base game soundtrack. Who knows? The game does have in-game radios. Maybe it's added something there. I really am not sure. And then Super Mario Wonder. I don't have a Switch, and I don't plan on having a Switch anytime soon because it's expensive over here. But I keep hearing great things about how that soundtrack goes. But as for a game that I can and do plan on playing and have heard good things about it, Sea of Stars. Everyone says pretty much everything about this game is amazing. And
I disagree.
Oh, do enlighten me.
Yeah, it's very pretty. It's got some great soundtrack. It's extremely linear.
That's a shame.
Yeah.
But hey, it's on the Game Pass, so I can try it out without paying extra.
Exactly, that's how I tried it.
So that's one where I'm looking forward to try. The others, I am not sure I will try anytime soon. So that's my list.
Yeah, but it's still funny. I want to linger just a little bit more on just this notion, because with some of the games that come out that aren't perceived expected AAA, they kind of, but that cater more to some of the niches I'm interested in, at least. Even if I can't, due to my computer's limitations or just time, play them myself, there's this big event that feels like, as you see them everywhere, as you take tangential media like content creators you enjoy that are playing parts of this game and that you follow along, more and more it feels like even without playing some games, you can still kind of feel in the loop through these ways. And it's interesting because on one end it's not playing the game per se, but it's still a way to kind of push back against some of the more exclusionary elements that can be in gameware. In this way, with this kind of outreach, with this kind of event quality to the recent releases, and the big releases in particular, you still have ways to not miss on the water cooler effect of an Alan Wake 2, of a Baldur's Gate 3, etc.
I think that points to the importance of streaming and YouTube in the gaming space. Because when you think about it, gaming is a very expensive hobby. You need to keep your hardware up to date, and you need to pay pretty high prices for games when there are dozens of releases every month. It's not just like one or two releases here and there. It's not like you're paying for, I watched these 2-3 movies this month because these are the ones releasing. No, you get like 2-3 dozens in a single month of games that are interesting. It's hard to keep up.
Yeah, and I had to keep a pretty tight shape and not mention things like live services and like to make my pre-selection for this episode, and that was still 32 games. That's 2 or 3 a month
Yeah.
of games that are personally relevant to me and that I have either played or could absolutely see myself playing if that was easy and accessible to me.
There are so many releases each year that if you check Wikipedia, they have you put the year followed by in video game, and they have a quick overview of the year. If you look up at least 2023, I'm not sure when they started doing this, but there are so many releases that above the release calendar, they actually had to put a section of um, critically acclaimed titles so that people know when those big titles actually came out. Because otherwise, you'll spend hours browsing the huge timeline that is on the page.
Yeah, and it's not like it's all fillers. For instance, I've mentioned several times how much I've enjoyed Dungeon Drafters, and it's not on anyone's list, even though it released this year, had an update recently, and there's enough games, enough great games around that some can fall through the cracks and go unnoticed for a while. And some games even stay unnoticed for a while and then suddenly gain a huge burst of attention. That's what happened with Among Us, to the point where I think it's tomorrow that the Vampire Survival DLC collab with Among Us is going to release.
That is such a
crazy stuff.
No, that's a real thing.
I can't comprehend that sentence.
You know, the funny thing, I didn't expect anyone to bring this game up, but I was hoping it would happen because I discovered something this year that was very interesting to me.
Uh-huh.
The sprite designer, I guess, sprite artist for the game, the main one, is a Brazilian.
Yeah.
Called
Cool.
Glauber
Neat.
Kotaki. He has a profile on Instagram that I thoroughly recommend. He's also worked on 30XX, which is a roguelite inspired by Mega Man X.
I've heard about that before.
Yep.
He's been getting some good work in the games industry, and hey, I know it's not music, but shoutouts to him.
Great.
Shoutouts to him.
Nice. That brings up another thing. That sentence is as incomprehensible as Final Fantasy with Fall Guys, and yet that also happened.
And apparently was fun.
Yeah.
And we haven't even mentioned whatever's happening on Fortnite yet, because that's almost too scary a game culture singularity.
I haven't looked into the event horizon in years.
This is gonna go a bit away from gaming, but it still shocks me that Fortnite has a crossover with the novel franchise Mistborn. The writer Brandon Sanderson has not allowed anyone to make games out of it because he's very selective. He doesn't want a game based on this franchise to be half-assed. But he has a friend who works for Epic, and so he just allowed him to make a skin based on the main character from the book.
Sure.
Wow, huh? I mean, it gets you publicity.
Yeah. No, then, is there something that would fit our now-playing sections that we haven't covered throughout the
Not
rest
really,
of this
but
episode?
we did miss something, which is hilarious given that there's a special last mentions that fell through the cracks.
Oh, yes.
And because even that section fell through the cracks. We didn't talk about the sheet music dump. We skipped that.
Oh, yeah. Right.
That's big and important. It needs to be talked about.
Because I thought this was Jedi Survival was in the section for best soundtrack, but I guess not.
Apparently not. So
you were the one who wrote the
it's okay, relax. Sometimes
no, I'm just joking. I'm memeing around. It's fine.
So Rana brought this to my attention. Apparently, the composer for Jedi Survivor released everything in sheet music form, in PDF.
It's like 1,800 pages of sheet music.
For every possible instrument that plays over the course of this soundtrack.
Which...
available for free for everyone. It's amazing.
Yeah.
Just a quick correction, since we like to be transparent. It's two composers. It's Gordy Hobb and Stephen Barden. But They just
Okay, I'd
Thank you.
only seen the Barton post, so I wasn't aware the
Yeah,
other one did as well.
I imagine he posted, but the score is actually by both of them.
You
But,
know, we
yeah.
talked about access to music. This is incredible because now anyone who wants
Yeah.
to learn to play this, who's inspired by this soundtrack, can do so.
Yeah,
That's an absolute classic.
Yeah,
free download 8 hours of music if you play everything back to back.
Yeah, it's beautiful. I just have nothing but respect for this.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
it is. We've talked a lot recently, like we talked about it with like the 14
Mhm.
Primals concerts.
They're finally
Preservation of music.
Yeah, they're finally streaming the next ones. Thankfully, they're streaming the Primals it'll be a separate ticket, but the Primals and Keiko's Piano.
Yes.
When is that? I almost thought I missed it. That's pretty soon, right?
It's going.
I
The
think
Fan
it's
Fest
January.
is in January.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I thought I missed that for a
but
second because I've been so out of the loop on 14.
Preservation of music
Yeah.
is so important.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
so
just-
important in an age where companies are so reluctant to release it, and even when they release it, they put a price tag in front of it.
Mm-hmm.
Hi, Nintendo.
I mean,
Hi,
I-
Nintendo.
I
Hi, a lot of other games.
I'm not opposed
It's
to
almost
buying
everything.
soundtracks. Lord, no, I buy my share of them. So I'm not the price to entry is pretty bad, but
Yeah, that's
Square releasing Blu-ray audio primarily really grinded my gears, and Nintendo being stupid about their soundtracks. We talked about that earlier, and we're still talking about that. Instead, just here, have the whole sheet music. Enjoy. Learn to play this. Learn to experience this yourself. Ugh, my heart.
I think what
Yeah.
makes this even more noteworthy is that they apparently were allowed to do this in spite of being under the wrathful and watchful eyes of Lucasfilm/Disney and EA.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is not a place where you'd expect this to happen.
No, absolutely not.
And that means if they can do it, others
everyone can do it.
Someone's heart grew 3 sizes that day. There's your prerequisite
Absolutely.
Christmas reference. Let's move on.
Speaking of Christmas,
In other games that haven't really fit others categories, I do need to mention Atelier Ryza 3, which has this nice feel-good soundtrack, even though my favorite part of the soundtrack was actually just reused tracks from the first Atelier Ryza game, because you go back to some of the areas you explore there. And it's a good one. Sea of Stars, that's why I was going to mention it, because it's not a roguelike, but it's certainly indie, and it's got some bangers. It's got some very high point.
Yeah, as for
And that's all for me.
as for references that kind of fell through the cracks, I want to give a shout out to an idol/clicker game. We don't talk much about those because there isn't much gameplay, and this one in particular is entirely not composed in house. It's all not even licensed tracks. It's either copyright free or Creative Commons licenses.
Right.
Which is a game called Cell to Singularity.
Okay.
But I want to give a shout out to them because it's sort of an edutainment game in a way, because every upgrade you get in this game has a little bit of trivia talking about scientific discoveries, or sometimes about the dinosaurs, sometimes about planets and stars and stuff like that. And every week they have a new temporary event that cycles. And recently they released an event about music, explaining a little bit of how music works, about sound waves, about certain instruments, about the history of music. So shout outs to making that information available in an easy way, because this is a game that's also available on phones.
that's great.
What's the name of this game?
Yeah. And it's good to have some feel-good elements at the end of this episode, honestly.
What's the name of the game?
It's called Cell to Singularity. I wouldn't necessarily say the soundtrack to the music event is particularly amazing, but the fact that they're bringing this information up and their use of classical music in other parts of the game is also really good. So shout outs to them.
You mentioned commonly, like you mentioned Creative Commons and open music. I mentioned Time Wasters as one of the games in the roguelite section. Apparently, all of their music is also specifically Unity Asset Store, which seems lazy, but they picked really good ones. Music supervision is hard, guys, and they did a really good job with it.
Yeah, it's fine to purchase your asset if you use them in a transformative way.
Yeah.
I mean, speaking of choosing your music correctly, I've touched a little bit earlier that I've mostly been playing Gotham Knights lately for catharsis.
Mm-hmm.
That game is not a game that has a particularly great soundtrack. It's very, very forgettable, but it has a really amazing moment with licensed music, where
Okay.
you enter Blackgate Prison to talk to Harley Quinn, and she's orchestrating a prison riot. And at one point, you have to go through that riot, and Harley Quinn takes control of the PA system and plays a punk rock cover with female singers of Livin' La Vida Loca. And that,
Okay.
Sweet.
that's an amazing moment and the most fitting thing for Harley Quinn to do in a game ever.
I love that. That's fantastic.
That's amazing.
Yeah, that's adorable.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, and almost forgot, Disgaea 7. I like that it's a little bit less crazy than Disgaea soundtracks usually are. I like when things get less crazy.
That says a lot about how
That should
crazy
tell
Disgaea
you
is,
how
yeah.
weird they go, yeah.
Yeah.
And so I appreciate the balance they found for this one. And there we go.
Yeah.
That's
Speaking of
2023.
speaking of Christmas, Galen, is there a list of things for now playing for you, possibly?
I haven't played them yet. Wait till next week.
Well, we'll see that then.
Yeah. I'm staring down the barrel of a 4-way runoff. We had a runaway lead at the beginning of the voting phase, and then all of a sudden 3 other games have caught up. There's one
Speaking
vote
of-
between them.
Although if we are going to talk about recent entries that you've played, I just have this persistent thought that the soundtrack you used for the 2-point hospital playthroughs would work very well for Factorio as well.
Oh, yeah. Whitepad Audio. Yeah, I'll check them out. Again, shout out to Whitepad Audio, Carl Casey, and, streaming, he lets you use his music for streaming, is the short version. So, shout out to that guy. Thank you for being awesome.
Sweet stuff.
It also would have been great to
Speaking
To the Core until I realized that To the Core had its own soundtrack. I'm not going to forgive this game for that. That is such a boneheaded move.
That one is gonna be hard to forget.
True.
A quick question: do we want to do a games from 2024 that we are excited for, like we did in the past? Or we're
The
cutting?
episode is long enough. I think it's better if we
Cool.
outro right now.
No,
I
that's fair.
think
Speaking of running away, what's that over there?
Get her!
Wait.
Get her! Get her!
Thank you everybody for coming along. I'll be here all week. Maybe not. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm looking what you're pointing